All right. Welcome, Doshia. Could you first tell us what your current position is, your new position? Congratulations on that. And then what you had done prior to that at Tulane.
Yes, I am Doshia Woods. I am currently the head women's basketball coach at the University of Denver, here in Denver, Colorado. And prior to that, I graduated from Tulane in 2020 with my master's in health and wellness, kinesiology. I just include all of those in there. I was at Tulane for 10 years. Um, that was seems like it was forever ago because I've been here for a couple of months, but 10 years actually as the recruiting coordinator with the women's basketball team there. I'm at Tulane University.
So that's so exciting to have this new position. And I'm just going to ask you some questions about sports and Tulane and yourself. I'm wondering first if you could just talk a little bit about what sports in general have meant for you as a student, when you were younger, maybe as a young adult. What was the importance or what was the influence of sports on you?
Sport for me has always been huge. I didn't have the opportunity to play anything organized until seventh grade. So, back then growing up in 80s, 90s, we would just kind of make up our own sports and play. But seventh grade, I had the opportunity to then start playing organized at school. And it really, I remember seventh grade, I had a lot of behavioral issues. I remember the end of the year meeting, it was the principal and my mom, and they were really just trying to figure out what they're going to do with me. So when I got in eighth grade, they started using sport, and it said, if you got in trouble the week of the game, you're not going to be able to play. And so from that moment on, that conversation had stood out to me, and it really just changed the trajectory of my life. Then I realized that, I had to, have a good attitude. And then once I transitioned into high school, then I had to have grades. And I had an eighth grade basketball coach who we didn't have a lot growing up, but she told me two things: if I stayed in school and kept my grades up, she'll provide whatever sports shoes necessary. And keeping my grades up meant like a 3.0. So sports for me really changed. I didn't realize where I grew up that there were more than 7 high schools. I didn't realize a lot about the time, but once I got in high school, I realized that I could actually go to college by playing a sport. So without sport, I know I wouldn't be sitting here in this seat. I definitely wouldn't have my degree. So it was a life changer for me. And I think a lot of just resources helping me along. We never had all the money or time, things like that. But sport has been phenomenal to my success, personally and professionally.
Could you talk some about your time at Tulane and what the experience at Tulane in particular meant for you, as, I don't know, for your professional development, for your personal development?
I loved my time in New Orleans and at Tulane. I was there, as I mentioned, for 10 years, and the last 2 years is when I was actually on a committee with Laney, and we were talking about different majors, and I didn't realize the opportunities that Tulane provided to me as an employee. And so she's with me, you can get your master's. And so after being there and kind of being a full-time employee, right, women's basketball is pretty demanding in terms of July. You're in the gym at 8 a.m. The last game could be scheduled for 9 p.m. So you're in the gym all day. And in this time when I decided to enroll in a master's program, I didn't know how I was going to make it work. So the 2 classes I took that summer definitely were the most challenging. But my time at Tulane, what I enjoyed about being an employee there and just a university is just the diversity of what you were allowed to do. I think sometimes people overlook the different areas that you can get involved in. I think it provides a lot, but you also have to go look for it. I don't think I realized from a student perspective what was allowed or what was provided until I started taking classes, and I'd get certain emails. I'm like, this is on campus. I've been here for this long. And so it really encouraged me to step outside of my athletic box. The time that I was there, you kind of get caught up in the same kind of routine, seeing the same people. So I was really excited about that part, to just learn a different part of campus, honestly.
And so Lainey is Dr. Lainey Dornier, who oversees our kinesiology program. And so she, as a faculty member, she was recruiting you, it sounds like.
Yes, or she was letting me know the possibilities.
Right.
And so,
okay. So what was the value for you of earning a master's degree from Tulane? Do you think it helped you get to the important position that you're in now?
Absolutely. I think in the interview process for this position that I currently have, it was about 4 weeks long from start to finish. And with the graduation being in May, I already had my cap and gown, had some graduation photos, and I'm huge on social media, but I couldn't wait to update my resume, honestly, to say that it was completed. And so in the different interviews that I had, it came up every single person that I met with. I think at my age, I don't mind my age, 41, that people were just impressed that, I had the initiative at this age to not only start, but then complete it. And whether it helped me get the job, it definitely didn't hurt. But I think just the perseverance and determination that showed at this age was a factor that, they say some of those things in basketball, like do things that don't show up in a stat sheet. And I think some of that, earning that master's, definitely helped prepare me for this opportunity. And I would also add, the last class that I took with Professor Irina, I was amazed at how much that class prepared me for the interview process too. So I don't know, could I have still gotten this position? Absolutely. But I definitely felt a lot more confident after completing my master's and taking some of the classes that I did to help me prepare for this.
And so another big issue going on right now in the world is Black Lives Matter and consciousness raising around racial equity and diversity issues in so many different fields. And I'm wondering if you have any reflections as a Black woman working as a professional in sports on, like, do you think has anything changed? Do you think that there will be changes? What are the implications for being a professional in sports for you personally and more broadly?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, I'll back up to my undergrad. I was actually supposed to be a graduate assistant where I did my undergrad, and I was that for literally a couple weeks. And then coach ended up promoted me just to an assistant role, but I kept the one class, research methods, that I was in. And then that was one of the last classes that I took. And I thought it was interesting that I still had the presentation back then, 20 years ago, it was affirmative action in sport and how it has this whole, the opposite of it, or if you are, in my case, a Black female, you feel like, oh, you got this position because they just wanted affirmative action. They needed to check these boxes. And so reading that paper and then doing the paper, something similar, just about the opportunities for specifically Black women in sport, women's basketball, it's crazy how a lot of it was very similar. That part really struck me. And I even remember reading both papers, like, am I missing something? But I do think being optimistic that there is, especially now, as you mentioned, with the Black Lives Matter movement, there's a lot of initiatives coming out, a lot of organizations that people now are starting to talk about their biases, recognize it, and there's some things that are systemic. And fortunately, if we're looking at the bright side of being in a pandemic, we're all forced to talk about it now. I think before we were in a time in society where there's always a distraction. You didn't have to truly dig deep into it. And this has given us an opportunity. And I think you're seeing a lot of initiatives, not just based on, I think the downside, sometimes people feel, oh, you just want to diversify. It's not that, but it's broadening and giving people who have the same type of resume and the opportunity to have a seat at the table. So I think for me, I'm really fortunate to be in the position here, and I have enough confidence to know that I've coached for 19 years, that my resume got me the position. I just happen to be Black and a female. And I think the more that we can allow the conversations to be had in diversity, that we'll all grow. And sport is always a great place to start because it's so diverse as it is. But I hope the conversation continues to grow, not just conversations about experiences, because I think that's a lot of what we're also seeing. You can only speak from what you know. And the more that we have this freedom to talk about it, I think we're realizing that we were just raised in two separate worlds. How we see the world as women, how we see the world as, Black women, how we see the world as whatever you identify. They're not the same. And I think the more that we can utilize this time to talk about it, we'll be better in the future.
That's great. Thank you.
Sorry for the long-winded answer.
No, I think that's great. And It's really important, and I think we should talk about it whenever we can, actually. So final thing, what would you say, people should be thinking about with Tulane and homecoming during a pandemic? What's on your mind, and what would you hope for all of us at Tulane during this homecoming season?
I think the homecoming season, well, first of all, get creative. Homecoming is always a great time that you can kind of reconnect with your friends, your professors, just reminisce. And I think that the other positive of the pandemic is we have the technology like we have now to still have some interaction. So host a Zoom party, participate in it. And though it may not be face-to-face contact, it still has been good during this time to have some interaction. So get creative about what you're doing, and then reminisce just about the time at Tulane. I think Tulane is one of the universities that provides so much, so many opportunities for both their current students and alumni, and even faculty too, that I think sometimes people think, oh, it's just about the students, or it's just about the people at the top. I think Tulane has done a great job of trying to have something for everybody. However you want to get involved. If it's finances for you, financially you're able to support, absolutely do that. But really just support the team, especially now. The football team is doing a lot. I had a great win last weekend, but just as they come to homecoming, just been able to support in whatever way that you can now. And sometimes it just might be your time and energy, and that's sufficient too. But don't miss an opportunity to celebrate, with those that help you get through, and those that have been there along the way as well.
Great. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate your time today, Doshia.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.